But it's not always obtainable. I mean, I think you got to be careful, because if I think that's the goal, but let's be honest. Are we all men that are completely in control of our emotions all the time? I know that that's the goal.
Yeah.
But this morning with my wife, I was feeling overwhelmed, and I had to pray, and I had to set an example. And I didn't feel like doing it, but I knew that I had to, because my wife was looking for me to be strong in that situation. And so the goal, but I just don't want the viewers to think that this whole idea of perfect masculinity is what we're all about. But that's the goal.
Yeah, to have some emotional control.
Yeah,
and you kind of exuded that, Michael.
But I do think it is I find it a very unmasculine trait for someone to lose their emotional control.
It's the lack of emotional control where you throw a table across a pub,
Yes.
or you chin a guy, or or there's the emotional lack of control when you start weeping uncontrollably.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a Gen Zer on YouTube this morning whose girlfriend, he had the blue hair and the nose pin. His girlfriend had taken him to a scene in a movie, his favourite movie, The Joker, where Joaquin Phoenix is coming down the stairs doing the dance. And so there's this iconic staircase, and his girlfriend had taken him there as a surprise and filmed it. And he had a complete emotional breakdown. I can't believe it! I can't believe it! I went to the staircase. I went to the staircase. But it's both ways, isn't it? It's that a lack of emotional control in an aggressive way, or in a kind of.
I think you made a point. You said the fact that it's if you lose your cool, you lose your respect. And I think it's really that. I've the scar tissue method, like you always talk about. I saw that even in my marriage. Like the first maybe a couple months of my marriage, it was super convicting, because in that moment, it was no longer about what I was talking about.
Right.
Everything, even if she wanted to listen, she was no longer listening to the words that were coming out of my mouth.
Are you hearing this?
It was more about, she was looking at me going,
from our scars.
This ain't you.
Yeah. Right.
This is different. You're a different person. And to some extent, I'm kind of scared right now. Because you're more imposing than I am. You're physically stronger than I am. And right now you're losing your cool. How much more are you going to lose your cool? Right? So it's like, if you can't control yourself with this, can I express myself to you? Do I always have to walk on eggshells with you? And that one moment took quite a few more months to deal with.
To heal.
Just that one moment.
Yeah, this is for if you're watching, this is first of all, I got to commend the men for speaking. I can relate to what you said, Michael. I mean, I grew up with a stepfather who used to. I literally thought what you just. I couldn't put it into words, but he would have fits of rage where he would go nuts, and my mother would clean up all the glass, get the people to come in and do the new window. He'd bust out the windows in the house. I would just freak out, and I remember going, "Wow, the stronger person here's my mom," when she really wasn't. But that's just what I said, because he couldn't control his emotions. And I love this. I love the back and forth. There's the extreme, as they would be called now. There's the beta male who hasn't been taught to be a man. It's like, hey, stop, dry your tears, buddy, sit up. And there's a guy who's like, a minister to society. But I do think, just if you're listening, and even for us here on this show, emotional control is huge. I did a bit of research. I found out that I read an article, this guy named Scott Galway. He says the most dangerous person in the world is a young man who's broke, emotional, and alone.
Wow.
Why is he the most dangerous man? 93% of prison inmates are men. 98% of death row inmates are men. Men overdose on drugs resulting from inpatient hospital treatment more, meaning they get overdose, go to the hospital, and then have issues medically more. Men are more likely to be homeless and for longer periods than women. Men are 41% more 41% enrollment in the university in the 60s, or in the now, but in the 60s the enrollment in university was 60%. Men are less men are going to university, being educated. Men are twice as likely to overdose, 3 times more likely to commit suicide. That's scary.
Yes.
If there is a virtue that I want to put forward that we need as men, is we need emotional control.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I would also say that you could even take it to the other extreme, where you have emotional suppression. I think that's an issue that we can struggle with today, where you know you get one side where it's like men are too emotional, and the other side where it's like no, you can't show any emotion. You've got to be a robot, suppress everything. You can't feel, you can't be sad. And then what happens is over time you get all these bottled up emotions that all of a sudden it comes out in other areas of your life. You have health conditions, you have bursts of rage, and then a bunch of these issues that you're talking about as well.
This goes on to my next thing that I think every man has to have. You gotta be fit.
Let's go.
You gotta have fit. You gotta be fit. I'm in London. I gotta be fit, bro.
Ours already
gotta be fit, bro. You gotta be fit, fam. As the young people, gotta be fit, fam.
Right.
You gotta be fit. I think this is huge. We can't be a bunch of chubby guys.
Right.
It's just
It's not inspiring.
you can't. Now, I'm not saying this as an arrogant kind of like, hey, we're better than. But if men are protectors, and we're going to protect our family, you can't protect your family when your fitness game is trash.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Running after that bag.
Exactly. You're trying to go outside.
Right, and you're denying a puppet.
You got hold on, honey. So I think fitness is huge, and I'm going to give you some more stats. So you guys, this is interesting. They surveyed several thousand men, and they found that the average bench press 30 years ago was 240 pounds.
Wow.
Okay, the average. Whereas now, in our generation right now, it's 187. The average squat was 277. Now it's 225. Literally, men are getting not as proud. We're literally getting physically weaker.
Need to step up in the gym.
And this matters for war.
100%.
This matters for protecting our country.
Yeah.
This matters. So I think fitness is huge.
Yeah, but isn't it not about the optics? Because you think that a lot more guys go to the gym now than they did 30 years ago.
Right. Yeah. Shit.
So, I mean, what's going on?
Toxic lack of masculinity. That's what's going on.
Yeah. It looks good on the outside. It looks
Yeah.
like we've got this. We're drinking this fuel and taking these whey and protein and all that kind of business. But I still can't bench press. I still can't open this bottle of jam.
I think that's it, right? Isn't it?
Yeah.
Like it looks good.
Yeah.
Right. What are you talking about? You're talking about fitness. Fitness. It's so weird. Like I think I learned this after a little while. Like fitness, I may not look like the biggest in the room.
Yeah.
Right. But I might have some muscle. I may not look like the biggest in the room, but I also need to be fit. Right. You could be able to, I don't know, like curl some heavy weights, but when it actually comes to using that strength, like the how you look is not always equal to the strength that you have from the gym. Right. A lot of people go to the gym. But sometimes, and I go to the gym, right? And I see people in the gym sometimes, and it's like half of the time you're on your phone. You're not actually really training, but you're going there to be able to say to people that, I go to the gym 5 times a week. Now, when people hear that, they're like, oh yeah, you go to the gym 5 times a week. But what do you do in the gym?
Right.
How do you bench?
Yeah.
What do you bench? I think that's why the questions kind of change nowadays amongst myself and my friendship group. It's like, how much do you bench? Not how many times do you go, but what do you do whilst you're there? And I think that's what really matters. Like when we go to the gym, not if, we should.
Right.
But when we do, what do we do? And then when we come back from the gym, what are we eating? My wife is gonna hear that shit. Changing our diets now. You said that publicly.
That's deep, because it's what you said there. It's not about where you go; it's about what you do when you get there.
Yeah. So this is huge because I think our generation growing up, you see these statistics where you're able to do more. Fitness is the health, but it's also what it trains you to be and do.
100%.
It's the mental discipline. It's the
100%.
failure.
100%.
It's what it does to you
100%.
neurologically. I mean, you could speak about this. I mean, I'm writing a book called Tears, and I'm realizing that fitness literally rewires the human brain. It tells you that you can overcome if you've been abused. It tells you these things. So when they're removed from society, you don't have fitness in the schooling. You don't raise men to be active. Short story, for as an American doing this, there's a guy by the name of Derek Jeter who is a professional baseball player. I know it came from cricket, I believe. But he was in a position, I can't remember if he was 16 or 17, but early in his career where he was playing, he was doing terrible, he was depressed because of it, he was discouraged. He called his mom, I'm quitting baseball. I'm quitting. The dad overhears, and dad goes, he can't quit, it's not an option.
There we go.
Wow. And she goes, no, honey, dad jumps in, he can't quit, it's not an option. He puts a man in him. Yep. So what happened? He didn't quit. He worked through his tears. He pushed through, and now we have arguably one of the greatest men to ever have played the game and has gone on to inspire so many. Why? Because there was a man in there that pushed him physically to go through this thing to help him have a mindset that says, I can overcome this. And I'd be dishonest if fitness hasn't helped me overcome challenges in the world.
And I think this is what I was going to add on to it, is I think the reason why people are most likely getting weaker is because we live in a society now where marriages are falling apart. Like, I grew up in a single parent family, and I know that's a story for a lot of people now.
Yep.
So like during my time of filming, I would film in these care homes, and I'll be interviewing these people who are in their 80s, and they're there with their wife, and they're like, we've been married for 50 years, or we've been married for 60 years. And in these care homes, this is the mainstream. This is just normal, that people didn't divorce. But now we live in a time where you've got young men who are in single-parent families where the mother doesn't have time to take them to go do basketball. They don't have time to take them to go.
Doesn't really care.
And then at the same time, we have game consoles now coming out.
Yes.
Where the sports now can be done in the living room, where the parents don't have to go and do these things. That they can be self. And that was the story of my life. Like, I just sat at home playing games. I signed up to go do karate. I was able to go to one class until they then said it's £100 for you to get the equipment. And my mum was like, well, I can't do that.
Right.
And then also, she didn't have the time to be taking me to, she had 2 other boys to look after, including me. And I remember when I went to uni, I knew in my spirit, I need to go do sport.
Right.
I could feel that I need to be around men. I need to be pushed. I need to be challenged. But it was so daunting. It was so terrifying a concept because I'd never done it before.
Right.
To be around men I didn't know, to potentially embarrass myself because I don't know what I'm doing. And I remember I went to the door of the ice hockey classes, and I was like, oh man, it's going to be so good. But I just chickened out. I didn't have the courage to do it. And I think a lot of men today probably want to, but they just haven't had those role models in their life. Right. You're saying, say, no, he's doing it.
Right.
Yeah. To have that father figure in that life, that man, to say, do it. You know, this is going to help you.
Yeah, and so the Jeter story is perfect. That Jeter needed both. He needed mom to give him that empathy and say, hey, if it's too bad, come home. But then he needed dad to go, no, that's not an option. You're not quitting. Push through mentally, emotionally, go do it. And now he's become who he is. And I think the third virtue, I think emotional control, fitness, I think this is going to sound a certain type of way, but understand me when I say it. I think all men need the capacity for violence.
Yeah.
You don't need to be violent. I'm not saying all men need to be violent. That's part of the problem. But you need the capacity for it. Right. In other words, not to be a threat. Right. But to be a protector. Yeah. Right. Again, your wife is not going to give you a hug if she beats up the burglar. Because you didn't want to have the capacity for violence. Right. That's not happening in our home. I'm going to get beat up before my wife gets touched. Yeah. I'm going to die. 100%. We just had an issue the other night. I heard a bump in the night. I jumped up, broke the bed, ran downstairs. My wife said, you are crazy, honey. I said, no, I'm protecting my family. But I think we need the capacity for violence. And to your point on the video games, Call of Duty used to be. It used to mean you're storming the beaches of Normandy. That's what Call of Duty. Now it's a video game. Now it's a video game. Now it's men sitting at home. There's a book written about how men are being destroyed by sitting at home feeling feeling successful, leveling up.
Right.
It's an illusion.
Definitely.
It's an illusion.
Illusion. It's not real.
Yeah, and you don't really have the capacity for violence by playing video games.
Right.
You have it by being willing to defend your family.
Right.
Not to be a threat,
Right.
but to be a protector. It's the capacity. This I'm going to protect this family, and if that means I put my life on the line, like Jesus did for us,
Absolutely.
then I think this is huge. The other one that I want to see what you guys think about is, although we need to be, we need to have, dare we say, brawn, we need brains too.
Yes.
Intellectual growth.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think that's something that we need as men. And I think this is an area where women, they get bothered sometimes, you know, because we can't hold a conversation. We gotta, as they say in East London, you gotta be in your books, brother. You gotta be in my books, brother. But intellectual, being a thinker. Science even says that there are science has revealed that being intellectual is actually attractive, specifically to women.
Right.
If you can hold a conversation and talk to them intellectually, they go, "Oh, really?"
Yeah.
Right? So there's this area where we as men have to grow in our intelligence. What do you guys think?
I think it increases people's capacity to respect you.
I was thinking that.
You know? Yeah, absolutely. You know, having somebody who's well-rounded. You know, and I think it's also that what you were saying about increasing your capacity of violence, because violence is not necessarily only fighting, but also thinking. Because I think even the degree of self-control requires a deep level of intelligence, right? And I think why there is that toxic perception of masculinity is because people have abused that capacity of violence. That a man who does engage in domestic violence, a man who does abuse his power over his position, is not a masculine man.
No, he's not.
Right.
And that is not masculine to do.
Exactly.
A real man does not do that.
Exactly.
You don't hurt women.
And I remember just hearing from another podcast about how hurt people
And are easily hurt by people.
Exactly. And I think that's where this toxic masculinity stems from.
Yeah.
It actually stems from people who've been hurt by non-masculine men.
Yeah, because I think like we don't want to get confused in the sense that the things that are being described as toxic masculinity today, like they are bad, right? Like in terms of some of the abuse that can happen in the nightclubs, the way that men are teaching other men to like bully people, put them down, and we can like those things are wrong, but those things are not masculine.
They're not masculine at all.
Masculine, but men are getting into a situation where they believe this is masculine.
Right.
It's masculine to be a bully. It's masculine to be a thug, and I think this is the confusion.
And Michael said it's masculine to be smart.
Exactly.
To be,
No, you're a nerd if you're if you don't have you're a nerd if you don't have big bulging muscles. You're not a man, right? This is wrong.
These guys, but a filmmaker in the 70s and 80s, very famous American filmmaker called Woody Allen. The diminutive, geekiest. He was a sex symbol because he made some really funny films. He was a very smart guy, and he had these string of beautiful women who would like throw themselves at him because he was intelligent and he was funny.
And I've seen it in my marriage, like in terms of, there was a moment where we were walking down Oxford Street and I turned around. My wife had we were arm in arm, and I turned around and I saw there was a guy pickpocketing my wife.
Wow.
And in the moment, just my instincts was just like, hey, and I've like gone up to do something, and then the guys ran off. And he had another guy with him, and then they both ran off. But in the moment, my wife, you just see her just like, oh, like my hero. I didn't know. I just shouted, hey! But then they ran off. But I think in the moment, she saw that there's a capacity there.
Right.
He would look after me, and I wouldn't have to defend myself. I'd be hopeless. I know my
Have you seen? There's that video.
He didn't pay the guys.
There's a video of a girl. She's online and she's talking about how she broke up with her boyfriend because they almost got attacked. And right when the guy went to fight, he goes, and then she's standing there about to have to fight the guy. She goes, I broke up with that guy.
Wow.
And it's like going viral. And she goes, I didn't want him to die, but this. This, I mean, come on. Even I didn't. I'm a woman. I didn't do this. I mean, there's got to be, we've got to protect our women. And I like what you said about the Smollett but Woody. I think the other thing that I would put forward, tell me what you guys think, that shows real manhood is you gotta have a sense of humor.
Yeah. I think they're very closely linked.
Yes.
Intelligence and sense of humor.
Right.
And going off what Jamie shared, a lot of comedians have a string of women after them, even if they're not in the gym all the time.
Ugly guys.
They're pretty skinny guys, like weird guys often, but they're hilarious.
Yeah.
And I think that stemmed from that intelligence, that extra time maybe in their books when they were younger.
Experience as well.
And it kind of has slingshot them. That investment that they took. Okay, everyone else is at school, in the gym, sleeping around. I'm reading my books.
Yep.
And slingshots them later in life with a female crowd.
I think we all get to a point where there are problems. We all face problems, right? There are always problems every time, in every situation, every new level you get to. There's a problem.
Yes.
The thing about being like not only book smart but also street smart to some extent is that you become a problem solver.
Right.
And problem solvers are in high demand in this world.
Right.
And so like if you're around my wife, for instance, I know now, of course, that one of the things that attracted my wife to me was the way I would solve some problems and some issues. Not trying to impress her, just being like, okay, there is an issue. We need to solve this issue. I need to come up with ideas for us to, we need to do this and do this. And now she tells me in marriage, you're like, I remember when you did this and you solved this issue. And I'm like, oh.
You know this.
And I think it goes back to that thing of what we said at the start, where it's like, what makes me feel respected is then solving the issue. And you taking that solution that I'm providing.
A word of advice is it's about solving the issue. If you're going to do a bit of plumbing around the house, do some research first, because you don't want to end up with a bigger mess than you start with.
And then a real man has to
You have to pay for it. Oh God, so.
And I think a big part of it comes down to, in today's day and age, life has just gotten a lot easier. And a lot of these, I see that they're linked. Because life has gotten easier, so you don't need to control your emotions as much. You feel sad, just pop open Netflix. You don't need that intellectual growth. Just Google, right? So men are not challenged as much today. So they don't have anything to rise to the occasion for. And so because life is easier, we're just kind of getting weaker. We don't have a reason to bench so much because why? I can just go on Tinder and just find my next girlfriend and why? I don't need to put myself out there in the pub.
Like me.
Someone's
there for me.
Right.
Which is a digression of men, and it's not very intelligent. And I like what you said about problem solving. And this is what we are as men. We are manhood is earned. We've got to either, and as I say in our marriage with my wife, we're either going to cry or we're going to laugh. And I try my best to make her smile.
Yes.
To make her laugh. You gotta have a sense of humor. You can't be a boring guy. You have to have a sense of humor. I did even research on it, and they say that 80% of women value humor as one of their top 5 things in a partner.
You gotta be fun.
Yeah, you gotta have some jokes, right? You gotta have some jokes. A good joke can be a little bit more attractive than a 6-pack. Right?
Wow.
So you gotta have some humor right there.
That's good news for a lot of people out there.
It's good to have both.
It's good to have both.
Do not go pop any of us.
And the last thing, maybe this last couple things we talk about here, you got to show your sons and daughters you love them. You got to tell them. If you don't tell your daughter you love her, she'll become prey for, as they would say in the 90s, players. Men that are players. And a player can see a broken daughter a mile away. A player can see a broken girl from across the room. He can tell by what she's wearing. And if she doesn't get that love from you, then the player will tell her, I love you. 100%. And you know what? She will believe him. Of course. And if you don't tell your son you love him, he will become the player. Because
Looking for validation.
yeah, looking for validation by how many. That's why players become the best preachers. And yeah, I'm preaching to myself here. It's a big deal. So we've got to show our sons and daughters love. That's what a real man does. And the number of men that have bad relationships with their sons and daughters is just embarrassing. And lastly, just a thought. You know, when you go to the Bible, and the Bible talks about manhood, it says God created Adam, and he put him in the garden to work.
Yeah.
Now, of course, most people don't dig into what the word work means, but the Hebrew for work means to become.
Wow.
Wow.
So God knew the way you become a man is work.
Wow.
The Hebrew also means reveal.
Wow.
In other words, God knew that whether you're working or not reveals whether you're a man or not. And this is so genius that God says, women don't help you become a man.
Yeah.
Work does. Work does.
Work.
Work does. And so many men think they're men because they have women. And yet when you go to the Bible, a real man, real masculinity is having purpose,
Right.
having work. And if we even go deeper, before he gave him the work, he put him in Eden. And Eden represents, it's the Hebrew word presence. So if you're watching today, a real man is in the presence of God.
Absolutely.
A real man has a job. And that reveals, that helps him become a man. And it's why our young men need to have jobs from early on.
100%.
And with the men that I have on the show, it's been an amazing moment. But we want to say to you, those of you watching, that there's not an issue with toxic masculinity. There's a toxic lack of masculinity.
Absolutely.
Let us find those men and inspire them to go out and be the men to influence other men. Thank you for joining the show. We love you, and to God be all the glory.